Hello, dear friends. Quantum economy is entering its operational phase. Opinion piece. Something has changed. Operational phase. Quantum economy. Maintenance cycles. This is the first wave. Silence to avoid panic. Classified information. Convergence of signals. Synchronization window. Nothing is being delayed. Replacing the old system. Visible movement without announcement. Let's start. Something changed after January 20th, according to Mr. Poole. Not in the headlines, not in the speeches, in the systems. Several financial networks entered what experts call a silent synchronization window. Payment lanes were paused. Liquidity was redirected. This is not a collapse. This is a transfer. On January 20, 2026, the final QFS transition framework was approved from Cheyenne Mountain behind closed doors, following a 72-hour strategic briefing involving military command, Treasury oversight, and national security asset control. It wasn't a speech or a press release. It was a signature and a continuity authority. After January 20, 2026, the financial world crossed an irreversible structural line from which there is no turning back. It is no coincidence that people are currently experiencing pressure, confusion, or sudden changes in the rules. It is the direct result of the loss of authority of legacy systems. The back-end accounting books were reflected. This referred to the detailed and technical accounting records managed in the internal system or accounting software, as opposed to the legally required books submitted for audits. These primarily include the general ledger, inventory book, and annual accounts. Maintenance. From January 24th to 27th, several banking systems began extended maintenance cycles that didn't match any historical pattern. These pauses weren't random. They aligned with QFS compatibility tests, asset verification, identity mapping, and transaction purpose verification. This is how a new system replaces an old one, silently and in parallel. From January 24th to 27, banking networks entered extended operational anomalies labeled maintenance, which didn't match any historical precedent. These downtimes aligned across all regions. That alone confirms the coordination. Payment routing stopped. Liquidity routes were redirected. Settlement logic changed. This isn't how collapses behave. This is how systems transfers behave. The quantum financial system, QFS, is not a ROMA or a front-end application. It's a back-end architecture designed to eliminate debt-based monetary loops and replace them with asset-verified ledger-ended transactions. No remote engaging, no synthetic debt, no endless refinancing. The QFS cannot be made available to the public until legacy debt exposure is contained. That's why we are seeing quiet resignations at traditional banks, sudden capital restrictions, temporary withdrawal limits, and the depletion of emergency liquidity lines. That's not a collapse, it's containment. The QFS now functions as the primary backend for verified settlement and asset tagging. Legacy banks are no longer the ultimate arbiters. They are intermediaries and they know it. That's why capital controls are popping up without warning. Withdrawal rules are changing overnight. Institutions are contradicting their own policies, and executives are quietly leaving. They are losing control, not collapsing. Dates. From January 28 to 21st, Mr. Poole expects final backend audits, wallet mapping simulations, and multi-node stress tests. This phase is internal and will remain private. According to Mr. Poole, full activation will begin on February 1st, 2026. This will be the execution point. From that date, banking infrastructure will be migrated to the QFS network. Traditional clearing houses will lose authority. Debt-based currencies will enter their final liquidation stage, and real assets will regain their primacy. From February 1 to 3, a public signaling process is expected to begin controlled access. At that point, a limited activation of the EBS or a parallel encrypted alert system could be initiated, not nationwide at once, region by region and channel by channel. If activated, citizens will be able to receive secure notifications via SMS or email requesting identity verification, instructions for wallet activation, and confirmation of their debt status according to the new ledger. If they ignore this notification, their profile will enter restricted status mode, and the withdrawal method will be temporarily frozen. No codes will be sent publicly, and no links will be posted on social media. Everything will be direct and encrypted. From February 4th to 10th, a window associated with tired onboarding, often referred to as Tier 4B, would open. This would not be early access or a privilege, but rather the order of operations, since large financial transitions cannot be moved simultaneously without breaking the infrastructure. Tiered structures, including Tier 4B, exist because massive and sequencing transitions destroy the infrastructure. This is not favoritism. It is load management. And yes, gold matters, but not in the way most people think. Gold isn't the headline, but the anchor layer. The QFS is digital in speech, but it is backed by assets in its structure. Gold functions as memory and a value stabilizer, and the system moves away from fiat illusion. It's about digital rails with physical backing that don't require speculation. Why the media silence? Because announcing a reset before the containment measures are complete would cause panic. That's why the ABS exists, not to scare, but to guide when the switch is flipped. We are not expecting chaos. We are watching for coordination. Those expecting fireworks won't see them. Those observing the systems will recognize it. The question is no longer whether the reset will happen. The question is how smoothly it unfolds and who is paying attention. The signals are no longer scattered. They are converging. This isn't a drill. The transfer process is underway. Movement. Once the ledger's finality is established, transactions cannot be reversed, diluted, or remortgaged. That threshold was crossed before to the end of January. After that point, the old debt-based loop becomes obsolete. Between February 1st and 5th, the internal calendar indicates controlled public signaling, not announcements but instructions. This is where the ABS or parallel secure alert frameworks comes into play. The ABS is not a rumor. It's not propaganda. It's command and control communication for civilian systems during the overlay. When that phase is activated, people won't be asked to believe. They will be told what to do. The messages will be shot, with clear steps and no debate. And yes, the movement within the new system is already happening, quietly, not as a show, but as a confirmation that the network is working under real-world conditions. This is how the engineers validate reality. Gold is involved, but not as a fantasy. Gold is the stabilizer of the new system. As the digital rails accelerate, volatility must be tempered. Gold anchors the ledger as fiat solutions are phased out. That's no ideology, that's engineering. The change has been authorized. That's not a rumor. That's not a theory. That's execution. Nothing is being delayed. Nothing is being negotiated. Nothing is being voted on. What you are seeing now is execution. The silence is intentional. The pressure is deliberate. The confusion is temporary. Once the coordination is complete, guidance replaces the noise. Those waiting for permission will be late. Those paying attention will be ready. It's no longer a question of it will happen. It's about how quickly the new network assets control. The transfer is underway. The old system is finished, and there is no going back. Stay tuned, watch the actions, not the words. Preparation. The Quantum Digital Asset Initiative is already live in preparation mode. That's why banks are quietly limiting their activity. That's why the maintenance windows are being extended. That's why executives are leaving without explanation. The traditional system is being phased out without asking permission. A gold-backed quantum currency has been approved, not by politicians but under military supervision. The new currency model is asset verified, with a final ledger and no debt, no remortgage, no synthetic liquidity, no infinite renewal. Fiat currency didn't fail by accident. It failed by design, and that design is over. Wallets are actively synchronizing. This is the first wave. Internal test transfers are being conducted via Zurich, Dubai, Singapore, and Texas. All are routed through Project Delta Phoenix, a black budget reset protocol created to migrate value without collapsing the civil infrastructure. That's why there is movement without announcement. The crashes are loud, the deliveries silent. The SWIFT system is being phased out. It's not being shut down, it's being replaced. The QFS doesn't need trust, it requires verification. Every transaction is touched, every asset is anchored, every accounting entry is final. No reveals, no bailouts, no shady deals. The media remains silent, but the silence isn't ignorance, it's containment. Quantum economics is entering its operational phase. The network is built. The books are synchronized. The signal is live. This isn't about politics. It's about control, and control is changing hands. The old world ran on depth and confusion. The new one runs on value and finality. Change has been triggered. The rest are just catching up. The noise only returns after the change. Breaking news. Exceptional cold plunges the US and Insta-Europe. The next 10 days of winter will be the worst in 40 years in the Insta-US. No government shutdown. House of Representatives approves funding. Trump eliminates the United Nations to build a new international order. Putin accepts Trump's invitation to join the Peace Vote. The Peace Vote is an international organization to promote stability, restore legitimate governments, and ensure lasting peace in conflict-affected areas. Economy. Silver reaches $100 an ounce and gold approaches $5,000. Investors are abandoning treasury bonds due to excessive risk, according to Lena Petrova. China is unloading treasury bonds and accumulating gold. Europe. The US reaches an agreement with NATO on Greenland. Denmark expects a smooth process in Greenland. After Greenland, Trump wants to control Switzerland. The UK and France consider banning social media. President Trump warns of retaliation if Europe sells off US securities. Germany wants to withdraw more than $100 billion in gold from US vaults due to a loss of confidence in Washington. Goodbye to the F-35. Italy bets on the GCAP to achieve its airspace sovereignty. Cyprus activates state of emergency due to water shortages. Americas. The White House seeks regime change in Cuba by the end of the year. Carlos Slim bets on Mexican oil with a new project. Mexico granted asylum to only 3% of migrants who applied in 1 year. More than 1 million dogs live on the streets of Mexico City. Costa Rica builds a high-security prison inspired by El Salvador. Special forces rescue 40 US citizens in Venezuela. Colombia suspends energy sales to Ecuador and imposes 30% tariffs. Ecuador ended 2025 with more than 9,000 homicides, the highest number in its history. Argentina is projected to grow by 4% in 2026 and 27, according to the IMF, a faster rate than that projected for Brazil and Mexico, and also above the global average. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.